Hello, grade 4 students, and welcome to a new lesson. Today's lesson is from Module 6, Project 2. As for the objectives of the lesson, by the end of the lesson, you will be able to make a little book about your town in the past. Also, you will be able to revise grammar structures learned in previous lessons. Please open your student's book on page 73, workbook on page 75. Now refer to student book page 73, activity 1, and let's recall yesterday's lesson. In the previous lesson, we read a little book about a town. The little book compared a town 50 years ago and now. It compared it in the past and now. And today, you are going to make a little book about your town 50 years ago. Make sure you are ready. Now, let's practice giving sentences in the past with Ahmed. Miss Huda will ask Ahmed some questions. Read the first question with me. How many parks were there in your town 15 years ago? Look at the picture. It's mentioned 3 parks. So Ahmed would answer, there were 3 parks in my town 15 years ago. Let's continue. How many tall buildings were there in your town 15 years ago? Look at the picture. No tall buildings. So Ahmed would say, there weren't any tall buildings in my town 15 years ago. Super. Let's continue. Read the question with me. How many amusement parks were there in your town 15 years ago? Look at this. 1 amusement park. The answer would be, there was 1 amusement park in my town 15 years ago. How many shopping centers were there in your town 15 years ago? Look at the picture. 2 shopping centers. What would Ahmed say? Can you help him? He would say, there were 2 shopping centers in my town 15 years ago. Good job. Let's move on. How many bridges were there in your town 15 years ago? It's mentioned 1 bridge. Can you help Ahmed? The answer is, there was 1 bridge in my town 15 years ago. Read the question with me. How many sports centers were there in your town 15 years ago? It's mentioned under the picture, no shopping centers. Can you help Ahmed? He would say, there weren't any sports centers in my town 15 years ago. How many hospitals were there in your town 15 years ago? 2 hospitals. Can you help Ahmed answer this question? There were 2 hospitals in my town 15 years ago. Super. Let's do the next activity. Let's start with the activity. Fill in the gap with was, were, wasn't, weren't. Let's start with sentence number 1. There, space, 4 hospitals in my town 5 years ago. We have 4 hospitals. So we would say, there were 4 hospitals in my town 5 years ago. Sentence number 2. There, space, any parks in my town 3 years ago. We have any and we have parks as more than one park, the plural. So we would say there weren't any parks in my town 3 years ago. Sentence number 3. There, space, one amusement park in my town 10 years ago. We have only one amusement park, so there was one amusement park in my town 10 years ago. Sentence number 4. There, space, any bridges in my town 10 years ago. We have any and we have bridges, more than one bridge. So the answer would be, there weren't any bridges in my town 10 years ago. And now it's time to learn how to make a little book about your town in the past. Step 1. Use a few large pieces of colored card and fold them in half. Put them one inside the other and staple them together. Step 2. Draw something on the cover and write the title, My Town. Step 3. Find some pictures of your town 50 years ago. Then ask older people about your town and draw pictures on the left-hand pages. Step 4. Find or draw pictures of your town today on the right-hand pages. Step 5. Write sentences about the pictures. Write in pencil so that you can correct any mistakes. Step 6. On the top of the left-hand page, write 50 years ago. On the top of the right-hand page, write now. Make sure you use large letters. Step 7. When you are ready, write over your letters using markers or colored pencils. Before you begin, do the following. Make notes of the information you want to include. 2. Write the first draft. 3. Revise your writing, grammar and vocabulary. 4. Edit. You need to punctuate. Make sure you keep this checklist in front of you. Now it's my turn to talk about my town 50 years ago. Read the sentences with me, please. There was one shopping center in my town. There weren't any amusement parks in my town. There were 2 bridges in my town. There weren't any sports centers in my town. There weren't any tall buildings in my town. Now please follow with me. I will show you how to use the ideas in front of you about my town to make a paragraph. First, we need to write the title. It's my town 50 years ago. Now, we are going to take the sentences and form a paragraph. Let's start with the first sentence. We start by saying, there was one shopping center in my town. We started the sentence with a capital letter and we ended the sentence with a full stop. Then we continue next to it, but in this case, there is no space. So we go to the next line. There weren't any amusement parks in my town. Again, we started the sentence with a capital letter and we end it with a full stop. Let's go to the third sentence. There were 2 bridges in my town. Now, in this sentence, I continued next to the previous one. I didn't go to a separate line. And I ended with a full stop and started it with a capital letter. Let's continue. There weren't any sports centers in my town. And the last sentence, I need to write it next to the previous one. And I say, there weren't any tall buildings in my town. As you can see in front of you, I have written a paragraph of 5 sentences about my town in the past. And you need to do the same with the ideas that you used to make the little book. Thank you. See you next time. Bye.